This video is brought to you by my beautiful patrons. So lately I've been revisiting some of Disney's first films. You know, the ones that shaped the company's early years and influenced animation for decades to come, like Snow White, Bambi, and Pinocchio. I had an amazing time with all of these. Bambi even changed the way that I look at life itself, but one of these films stood out to me more than the others. Fantasia is a stunning anthology film that integrates classical music throughout numerous beautifully animated shorts. The introduction of the film isn't even animated. You're greeted by this total Melvin who walks you through the idea of the film and how music is going to play an important part in it.
Now, there are three kinds of music on this Fantasia program. First, there's the kind that tells a definite story. Then there's the kind that, while it has no specific plot, does paint a series of more or less definite pictures. Then there's a third kind, music that exists simply for its own sake.
Music was deeply ingrained into this film, and it received critical acclaim because of it. Financially, it was a big risk that heeded little reward, but in terms of impact, Fantasia was well worth it. Music would continue to be a vital aspect of Disney's films, whether they include actual musical numbers or just have very intentional and lively scores. This was most abundantly clear during the 1990s, where Disney saw one of its biggest booms in popularity. At this point, Disney films were becoming full-blown musicals, including the aspects that made shows on Broadway so successful. From chilling I Want songs to lively group numbers, these things were theatrical as all get out, and a lot of these films' success boils down to just that. The music in these movies defined a generation of childhoods, from A Whole New World to Hakuna Matata. Disney was not only cranking out show tunes, but massive hits. Now, Disney in the present has the biggest reputation it's ever had. While I've gushed over a few of these films for being the artistic achievements that they are, it's important to note that Disney is, well, a company. While great artists and storytellers certainly come out of the company, sometimes art and creativity isn't put at the forefront while making these films. The past few decades have been some of the most interesting for the company, in my opinion, because it seems that sometimes Disney is still able to hit incredible highs, but also cavernous lows. This isn't a new phenomenon. Disney has had decades full of stinkers, but what makes it interesting to me is that despite them, the company has grown ever larger over the past 20 or so years, and is the biggest it's ever been. Its memorable back catalog, mixed with occasional new hits like Frozen and Encanto, makes Disney a machine in the animation industry. And that being the indubitable case, Disney is able to phone it in a lot more often because at the end of the day, people will pull up. So, while a lot of great movies in Disney's filmography have had to write genuinely clever and catchy music to keep up, now they don't seem to feel that need. Enter Disney's most recent musical endeavor, Wish. This movie brings forth one striking question when you examine it critically. Does Disney want to make musicals anymore? Or do they feel an obligation knowing the absolute cash cow that they can be? Wish is the perfect example of pretty much everything we've talked about so far. It has some genuinely interesting ideas deep within it, and clearly has some people behind it who care about this company and the product that they're making, but it also represents the company, pushing its creatives to their limit, and not in the good way. And I would like to talk about it, because what else is there to do on this planet but to talk about the things we love and the things we don't. Much like the Harry Potter series, this video comes to you in 7 parts, the 5th of which is the longest. There probably won't be an 8th part years later though, and I'm not transphobic. It's not a perfect analogy. Part 1. Disney in the past 20 years. So I mentioned that Disney has had some cavernous lows semi-recently, so let's talk about why they were so low. Now, it's hard to make any of these claims without someone saying, "Hey, that's my favorite movie. I watched it every day in the hospital and it saved my life." And that, I understand. The enjoyment of art is subjective, so if you thought that Chicken Little was a beautiful allegory for childhood and the onslaught of technology in the modern era ruining our generation's brains, it is. That said, on a more objective level, it's hard to deny that some of Disney's films this century have been pretty weak. Wreck-It Ralph advertises the Disney Store, John Travolta Dog, Brown the Movie. All of these films were, yes, not great, but they also represent something very noticeable about this era. A lack of music. Now, Disney didn't straight up stop making musicals this century, and not at all, and some of their non-musical films are still very lovely, but they stopped making the music in their films as important as it was during, say, the 90s. And it makes you ask, why? Did they want to stop making musicals altogether? The 90s proved that Disney's musicals were where the bacon was, but during the 2000s, with the success of Pixar, we saw Disney take a shift towards non-musical 3D animated films. These were harrowing times. Despite cult classics and and a few successes here and there, this was a bad decade for the company. When your first movie of a new century is Dinosaur, you know you're in for a rough couple of years. Coldest take on the internet, but that movie blows. It seems like, as a company, Disney would rather not focus on musicals. Which to me is odd, because if we look at the entire list of Disney's animated films this century, the biggest ones are musicals. Tangled, The Princess and the Frog, Frozen, Moana, Encanto, these are huge movies. And most of their biggest flops aren't musicals. I think the problem is likely twofold. Musicals are harder to make, so to keep a more consistent release schedule, the company chooses to do them less often. Musicals are also just not as common in modern cinema, so perhaps as a company, Disney just wants to move forward. Disney clearly hates nostalgia and doing the same things over and over again. They never dwell in the past, reference themselves, or even capitalize and take advantage of your love. Oh, Disney, my unproblematic, non-human conglomerate king. If you can't tell, I'm being facetious. I definitely don't think that is the reason Disney is making less musicals, and if it is, it's a silly one. Musicals are less common, but that doesn't mean they're not ever successful. You just have to try. Disney is the prime example of that. Disney's reluctance to make musicals has resulted in a problem, and that's what this video is about. And what I think that problem really is that Disney feels an obligation to make musicals due to the financial incentive, and they push the artists involved in bringing their films to life so hard that they end up lacking just that. Life. Because of this, we lose what matters most in a musical, the story. A key example of this is actually a sequel to one of the most successful Disney movies of all time, Frozen 2. Really quickly, tell me 3 new characters introduced in Frozen 2, and I'll wait. Exactly. The story lacks so much that not even a few decent songs and some nice-looking animation could save it. In fact, there's a documentary that Disney made themselves that unintentionally reveals the harsh working conditions creatives undergo to make a film like this. Everyone in this documentary is just scrambling to finish this film, all to meet this arbitrary deadline of a winter 2019 release. Working with deadlines can be helpful for artists, but being thrust deadlines when you're making an animated film with so many moving parts obviously is going to affect the movie. And it did. No one ever talks about that movie, because it sucks, and it didn't even get close to the original in terms of memorability. Other than Into the Unknown, I don't know that I could tell you a single song in Frozen 2. There's a song by Weezer, I think. When that's all that I can remember from a movie, that Weezer covered one of the songs in the end credits, that's a bad sign, because of course I'm gonna know the Weezer part of it. This is a very worrisome and non-effective way to make a film. Sure, the film was massively successful, but at what cost? What did it normalize for Disney? To make movies like that. While decent and successful musicals can occasionally slip through, Encanto being the key example, this is a dangerous precedent. And the first fully original musical to be affected by this is Wish. Wish was released in late 2023 in honor of Disney's 100th year as a company, and because of this, it's full of little references to Disney's prior films. It begins with a souped-up Disney logo to remind you that this is a big deal, along with opening credits reminiscent of the studio's older films, like Snow White. These nods continue for the rest of the movie, and they range from subtle, like the ones I just mentioned, to on the nose, like this one.
Thanks for not eating me, John.
Don't mention it, Bambi. It's all good.
Usually I hate stuff like this, but for a movie meant to celebrate such a big milestone, it makes sense. This is supposed to be the Disney movie. In fact, it seems like Wish was almost manufactured to be successful. It utilizes a newer art style, the music is poppy and full of lyrically silly hooks, and it has adorable little sidekick characters. These traits have been really successful for Disney in the past, but spoilers, they weren't for Wish. Nobody saw this shit, and anybody who did thinks it's shit. So what went wrong? Well, it seems that people see through art that is made with cynical and money-hungry motivations. It's also just not very good for a myriad of reasons. Let's finally get into them. Part 2. That goat. The first thing that jumped out to me when I saw the trailer for this movie was the goat.
I'm talking. I am talking. Who knew my voice would be this low?
And immediately I was worried. This was embarrassing. But of course, I'm not a child, so a child may die laughing at all of the hilarious gaffes and shenanigans this goat gets into. But to me, this goat is indicative of some of the lazier humor Disney and a lot of children's animated films find themselves cashing in on.
Told
Good find, Valentino.
My butt found it.
This goat follows the trend of the animal sidekick, a staple of Disney films. And yes, I know that the goat has a name, but I don't really care. He hasn't earned my respect. These sidekicks rarely matter to the story, but serve as a cute companion to the main characters. The three functions of a great animal sidekick are to be cute and funny, to fill out the world, and to sell plushies. Let's take a look at some previous animal sidekicks and how they achieved this. Flounder, he's cute, he's a fish, and bam, his simple design makes him plush ready. Aladdin Monkey, check, check, check. Baloo, check, check, check. He even adds to Mowgli's character arc. The Lizard from Tangled, cute if you're into that sort of thing. He makes sense as a sidekick to Rapunzel because he could feasibly get up to her tower, and just look at those eyes. They're begging to stare at you from your bed. The Gargoyles from Hunchback of Notre Dame. You know, they can't all be winners. These animal sidekicks, the ones that are good, are multifunctional and create for a more cohesive story when utilized correctly. They're not just solely there to make kids laugh, they are clever writing tools. The goat in Wish does not have these qualities. While his jokes may work for you, his humor is more often than not distracting and pointless. It never feels natural, it draws attention, and it's lazy.
You know, all of this is just a bump in the road. A gigantically humongous bump.
You might think he's adorable, I can't really argue with that point, but does he really fill out the world? I haven't even told you anything about the main character Asha or where Wish takes place, but would this goat give you any idea of that? If I saw him without having seen the film, I'd guess that Wish takes place in a magical petting zoo. Pretty cool. And on top of it all, every plushie I've seen of this guy is pretty lame. His head is gargantuan on top of his tiny, tiny body, and the smirk he's giving makes me uncomfortable. I believe that the character Star does a much better job as the sidekick. Look at him. He's so happy. He's so happy. Star is a star. Yes, the film is so lazy that he doesn't have an actual name that Asha meets by making a wish to the stars. Star has a much more original design, doesn't speak, so there's much less opportunities for cringe, and makes sense in a film about wishing. I also love the plush. He's really easy to beat into a pulp, and he's very huggable, and I love him. You might think I'm nitpicking super early here, and I am. The heavier criticism comes later in the video. I bring this up early because I think that this goat represents something serious about why Wish failed, and it'll influence everything else we talk about in this video. Wish has so much of what made past Disney films great, but it lacks the earnest inspiration to create something, therefore making it impossible to be iconic. It was a film forced out of creative people, not a film made creatively. It has moments, sparks, little bits and pieces that demonstrate the talent of the artists involved, but it's surrounded by a product. It pales in comparison to the great Disney films it's emulating and paying homage to, because it has to pay homage to them. And this goat is a great example of that. On a surface level, it makes sense that he's here. Asha needs an animal sidekick. But when you look a little bit further, you realize that that's the only reason he's here. For the narrative function that the animal sidekick brings, not because it makes the movie any better or any more interesting. In other words, Wish is trying to recapture magic rather than create it. We talked about this when analyzing the new Mean Girls. Going backwards and capitalizing on the same stuff over and over again isn't how great art is created. Now, we've seen Disney do this time and time again to a much more obviously egregious extent with their live-action remakes, but with Wish it's a little bit harder to see on the surface. It looks like it's just a new Disney movie, but its insides, its skeleton, is full of reused bones from previous, much more successful Disney films. Wish revels in the fact that it is derivative, making constant reference to previous Disney products, creating characters hodgepodged from older ones, even following the song placements and themes of previous films. Because of this, Wish feels hollow and much less impactful than the better movies that it wants to be. And it's all personified by that goat.
All I see are feet.
Part 3, Plot versus Story. I think very often people tend to use the terms plot and story interchangeably. I find this kind of confusing, and I personally think it's helpful to denote the difference between the two. Plot is what happens in a film, the events that make up each scene. There are multiple ways of thinking on this, but to explain the plot of Bambi, for instance, one would say first Bambi is born. Because of this, he meets Thumper. Because of this, he slips on ice and gains independence. And because of this, he understands the harsh realities of the world through his mother dying. These are the events and and plot points that make up Bambi. The story, however, is everything that makes up a film, meaning character arcs, thematic elements, relationships, small moments here and there, everything. So to explain the story of Bambi, one might explain how Bambi is an allegory for life itself and depicts every scene through the lens of new experiences in life. Through friendship, loss, love, and chaos, Bambi finds what matters most to him in life, living through it. The film reveals its theme to you at the end as Bambi falls while trying to escape a forest fire with his father. His father shouts at him, "Get up."
Get up! You must get up.
Bambi is about living through the pain, the woes, and the trauma that life brings forth, because tomorrow may bring you something new that changes your perspective of yesterday. Sorry, where was I? Sometimes I get carried away thinking about Bambi. Oh yeah, Wish! Wish has a very hard time as a film because it prioritizes its plot over its story. This makes the film really difficult to be invested in because while I know what happens in Wish, I don't really care who it happens to. For a key example of this, look no further than the opening number. The very first song in Wish is called Welcome to Rosas, and it's quite ineffective at fleshing out the story of the film. We don't learn anything about any of the characters in this song, and everything we do learn is very lore-dumpy. Characters just sort of explain stuff to you rather than showing it, and you're left not really gleaning anything about Asha, the person singing the song.
So like, we have this king named Magnifico, and he brought roses many years ago.
Look at a song like Skid Row from Little Shop of Horrors, which perfectly sets up the location and the characters in the show. In fact, it almost introduces the location as a character itself, making it clear that each and every character in the musical is a victim of their circumstances, a victim of Skid Row. It doubles as both a way to flesh out our setting and an I Want song. We learn a lot about where the musical is going to take place and why it matters. Howard Ashman and Alan Menken took aspects like this from musical theater and transferred them to Disney's animated films, and it worked very well. Belle from Beauty and the Beast does this exact same thing, even showing the tense dynamics between Belle and her hometown. If you want an example of this in a modern Disney film, Encanto's opening number does this by introducing the Madrigal family, the entire town, Mirabelle, and Mirabelle's wants. The Lion King does this not even lyrically. You understand the dynamic between Simba, Mufasa, and the rest of the savannah just through visuals and music alone. Welcome to Rosas technically tells us a lot, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the characters, and anything it does tell us about the characters, we kind of already knew. Like, we already knew that Asha loved her hometown. What more can you give me? Therefore, it fails as a musical number and as a narrative device. It's also just not very good. It feels like someone is trying to overly act out a pop song.
Does it hurt?
Do you cry?
Oh, no, and you won't even miss it when you say goodbye.
The lyrics aren't functioning as something that a character might say, rather they are just simply about the town of Rosas. It's rough.
Hey, did I mention when you turn 18, you get to give your wish at a ceremony?
This is kind of indicative of the rest of the film. Dialogue in Wish is used not as a way to express the characters, but a way to give critical information to the audience. This isn't inherently a bad thing to do in a movie, especially one for kids, but when it's most of the film's runtime, it makes the film feel flat and you lose a lot of charm.
Help me! Best friend and honorary doctor of all things rational. My interview is in 1 hour, and I'm so nervous I think I'm going to explode.
Like, there are more clever ways to introduce elements of the plot into your film. So much of the dialogue in this movie feels like it is intended just for the plot, which is why it ends up feeling so forced and rushed. It doesn't take its time to make you care about any of its characters, so when important shit happens, it's entirely lost on you.
I'm rooting for you, Asha.
You are?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. But why?
It's clear how much you love this kingdom and its people.
Oh yes, please, tell us more about how she loves her kingdom. Let's take a look at Bambi again, a movie only about its characters that I might as well just make an entire video about. While this film is very plot light, it ends up benefiting quite a bit because of it. It revels in slow yet fun scenes that are intended to flesh out the characters and get the audience to relate to them. Bambi's moments are so much more meaningful because the audience grows a liking to Bambi, Thumper, and Flower. In a lot of this film's biggest moments, the dialogue is superfluous because the visual storytelling is the priority. Because of this, when Bambi's mom dies, you feel it. But in Wish, when Asha's whole life is uprooted when the king reveals his true personality, how could we possibly care? We barely even know her yet, and spoilers, we never really get to. Imagine if Bambi's mom died 15 minutes into the film, and all we had ever seen up until that point was Bambi talking about how much he loved his mom. You probably wouldn't give a fuck about that stupid deer. So I've hinted at it a few times already, but what is Wish actually about? It's very simple. Essentially, there's this guy, Magnifico, God, what a stupid name, that steals the wishes of everyone in his kingdom, roses, and can grant them at his will. This is presented as a good thing, almost like a trick to see if the audience has any media literacy. Of course, to most of us, the guy who steals your wishes and can grant them at any time he wants to is probably gonna be the villain, but our protagonist, Asha, is none the wiser. She interviews to be Magnifico's apprentice, but finds out that he's actually evil when she asks him to grant her grandfather's wish. Oh no!
Would you maybe consider granting his wish tonight?
You know, most people wait a few months, even a year, before they start asking me for things.
I'm so sorry.
This is implied to be kind of a big part of Wish, the idea that it's selfish to want your wishes to be granted. Now we can argue all we want about the semantics of what a wish is. I find the whole idea presented in the film to be a bit wishy-washy, but I do find this contention that the film has interesting, the idea that Asha has to justify that she's not being selfish about making a wish. And it's not just the villain who holds this idea, this whole thing happens again when she gets Star to help her.
I wished for more for us, for my family, and for... Oh, no. Not in like a selfish way. I just want their wishes to have a chance.
And I find this odd, because is that not what a wish kind of is? Inherently a little selfish? It's moments like this where the film brings forth an idea worth diving into. What is a wish? And are they a little bit taboo in the sense that it's a very passive way to solve problems by making one? But the film just moves past it, because wait! This is the part of the movie where the animals sing.
You're a star! Watch out, world, here you are!
Interesting ideas and concepts are dropped all the time in this movie, making it, again, really difficult to get invested in. Like, Asha's mom's wish orb gets crushed by Magnifico, and you're thinking, wow, her wish just got murked. That's some real stakes right there. Her life will never be the same again. Oh, she just gets it back at the end of the movie? Oh, and she's fine and everyone's happy? And they don't even try to explain how they got it back? Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. Everything Wish says, it's clear it wanted to say from the beginning. There's no discovery in its writing, no real development of its characters, and no strong theme. It has a theme, but because everything is so formulaic, it doesn't hit you the same way that previous Disney films might have. Oh, I forgot to keep explaining what happens in this movie to you. So Asha makes a wish to the stars, and then she meets this little star guy who, remember, doesn't just grant her wishes, but he does help her free the wishes, which is kind of the same thing. Magnifico keeps all of the wishes in his little castle. They're all floating orbs in the sky. It's very whimsical. And then they free the wishes, and then the movie ends. There are a few moments that try to add something to this nothing hot dog of a movie, but they're all so quick that it doesn't actually feel like anything happens. One of Asha's friends betrays her. Okay, we didn't really know this guy until he did that, so this reveal didn't really work for me. We knew he was sleepy, so... that's one kind of weird thing about this movie. All of Asha's friends are supposed to represent one of the 7 dwarves. This doesn't add anything to the film. It's literally just there for you to point and go, Dopey! Which I did. So, 1 point Disney, I guess. But yeah, this movie just ends. I remember watching this movie in theaters with my friend Kim, and we were both just sort of like, oh, I guess it's over now. And then we watch the end credits as it highlights every Disney animated film in order. Almost. You forgot some of the propaganda ones, Disney. I noticed. But let's just ignore our past. That makes us so much more marketable. You walk away from Wish pretty much forgetting everything you've just seen, and that's because the film didn't really care enough to try to make you remember anything. So kids don't care as much about this kind of stuff in their media as adults do, right? Let's indulge that thought. That's an argument I guarantee someone will make in the comments of this video. It's a kids movie. Who cares? Fuck you, Max. Suck my balls and die. To that I say, why do we care so little about what children watch? We all were formed by the stuff we watched or interacted with as kids. If I didn't watch the Muppets when I was a kid, I don't know that I would be making things, let alone be the person I am today. Also, I think it's fair to say that kids don't carry the bad shit with them into their adulthood. There's a reason your memories of certain franchises had to be unlocked when you grew up, cause that shit was bad or unmemorable. Half of the comments on my video about the Buddy series were like, I forgot these movies existed. I've seen all of them 12 times. And like, yeah, mindless art for children isn't memorable, and having meaningful connections with art matters. Which is why it's so sad to me that what was supposed to be a landmark film for Disney turned out like this. Because of this movie not caring all too much about the way the story was presented, just that it was presented, it's super forgettable. I've thought about this movie a lot now, and I don't think that I could tell you 3 unique things about Asha. In fact, who are any of these people? Part 4. These guys are bots. One time in my freshman year of college, I was shooting a movie with my friends down near a river, and we were walking past a bunch of frat guys, and one of them tried talking to us, and we didn't say hello, and he immediately dismissed us as bots. Now, for a really long time, I thought calling people bots was really cringe, but I've certainly come around to it, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. And I think what I like and dislike about this insult is that it deprives someone of the one thing that they really have, their personality. So while I use this insult sparingly and frequently among friends, I do understand its cutting nature, so I want to make it clear that when I call the characters in Wish bots, I mean it. So the characters in Wish are hard to relate to. We've already covered that. But I think there's something else at play with these characters, which is that they are rehashings of previous characters similar to them, but lacking the nuances that their predecessors had. First, let's discuss the film's protagonist, Asha. Asha falls victim to something, a word I don't really like to throw around all too often. She's adorkable. Now, you may be clenching the arms of your chair Get Out style right now, crinkling your face into oblivion, or you might be deeply, deeply confused. For that, let's jump into one of my favorite websites we haven't visited on this channel for a while, TV Tropes. TV Tropes defines adorkable characters as fictional characters whom the audience finds irresistible and cute because of their dorkiness, nerdiness, enthusiasm, or vulnerability. However, I think that's just the surface of what that word has turned into. For a while, adorkable worked because it was a subversion of what we expected attractive people to be. Look at Jess from New Girl, or even a previous Disney princess like Anna. These characters work because while they have definite quirks about them, they're silly, they like chocolate, and express their emotions loudly through the guise of a joke, they're also grounded in some sort of reality. In other words, their personalities feel cohesive and realistic. This is why people gravitated towards adorkable for so long. It was a genuine representation of a certain type of person that wasn't typically seen as the protagonist. However, there's been a sort of shift in how we perceive characters like this and how they're written. Characters like Jess or Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer were so beloved by fans that adorkable characters over time sort of became the norm. What was once a realistic depiction of lying around in your underwear eating ice cream all day and saying awkward things became a tactic to create fandom. The very idea of an adorkable character was not only no longer true to itself, but no longer true to the people who once related to them. Because of this, I personally started to see the cracks in the idea of a character written this way. Sure, characters written this way can still be relatable, but they also often aren't. They carry themselves with a TV-ready awkwardness that's just not real. If a character is going to be awkward, I'd much prefer them to actually be it.
Where did you get that dress?
Me did. It's what I done. What I hoped. Did it. I did it.
Now, some movies and TV shows do show realistic depictions of what it's like to be an awkward person, but some still cling to this idea of being adorkable. And over time, adorkable has just become a new impossible standard. You can be nerdy, but you also need to be good looking and not awkward when the plot needs you to chill. And I hate this. Why do we do this? It's also just not as effective as it used to be, and I'm quite jaded by it. So when Asha does stuff like this,
Be prepared for everything. Hold on. Hold still. Are you okay?
No, I mean, yes.
And trust me, she does stuff like that a lot, it doesn't grab me at all.
I'm helping Dahlia. Yeah, so...
Why'd you say it like that?
Like what?
And the problem is this. Asha is not actually relatable. She is an attempt at writing a relatable character. An attempt by someone who does not know what young people are like these days and thinks we all talk like Joss Whedon.
They are everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that.
Her adorkability feels extra forced when you consider that we also don't really know much about Asha, and she doesn't change much in the film. Everything we know about Asha, she has to explicitly tell us. She tells us that her father died and used to wish upon stars.
Always talking about the stars.
We used to climb that tree on the high ridge where it becomes just you and the stars. You know, he'd say, the stars.
She tells us she cares about her family and the town she lives in.
My Saba is good. The people of Rosas are good.
But we never really see her affected by all of this, by her past. And more importantly, we never see her past. She just talks about it, which is so boring. She clumsies her way throughout the movie, just going from scene to scene. And at the end of it all, you ask, who was she? A similar character, like Anna, at least changes throughout Frozen. Her naivety and awkwardness influences the decisions she makes throughout the film. She agrees to marry Hans because she's a hopeless romantic. She chases after Elsa because she loves her sister and doesn't understand the severity of the situation. It all makes sense. With Asha, everything she does is motivated by where she should probably be if the movie is going to continue. And the only glimpses into her personality we get are these soulless little quirks that don't really affect the people around her. They're all just like, yep, that's Asha. She's weird. Why make your character quirky if it's not gonna matter? The other character I want to talk about is Magnifico, the film's villain. This guy is just comically evil. The moment that Asha asks for a wish from him, he switches up entirely, right after singing a whole ass duet with her.
They deserve more than
I decide what everyone deserves.
This is Magnifico's major motivation, that he decides, and he says it a lot in this movie, and it's really funny. It's almost like his catchphrase. His shitty catchphrase.
They all deserve.
I told you, I decide what they deserve.
Please.
And I decide, if I even have to explain this, is a pretty weak motivation for a main villain. Similar to Asha, we know pretty much nothing about this guy, just that he's magic and that he really likes to decide.
I told you, I decide.
And the reason Magnifico feels so goofy is because he's not even really a character. He's like, not a person. He's an idea. The idea of this whimsically dressed, wish-stealing man who loves to decide everything, which admittedly is pretty scary, but it doesn't lead to any depth. This is surprising to me, because as campy as Disney's villains can be, a lot of them have reasons to be the way that they are. Scar wants to be king. The evil queen wants to be beautiful. These characters are at least somewhat grounded, and that's what makes them scary. Magnifico is just evil. I don't know why.
I decide.
The funniest part of it all is that at the film's climax, Magnifico turns towards dark magic, and it's supposed to be this massive switch in his character. But it doesn't work because, like, wasn't he already using magic in a very sinister way? Now that he, like, makes the world all green and cloudy and captures people with his goo, it doesn't really hit because these people were already secretly pretty miserable. It's like that kid you knew in elementary school who used to cut in the lunch line, posting fringe conspiracy theories on his Instagram stories now. It's not surprising, and what's the difference really? So these characters don't make sense, the story is incredibly streamlined, rushed, and basic, and it's fully aware of its derivative nature. In fact, it's proud of it. At least it's a musical. I love musicals. I can't wait to hear the amazing music they cooked up for this one, right? Right? Part 5. The music is bad. So Wish wants to be on the same level as Encanto so badly that they even did a weird, unsuccessful Bizarro version of its opening number. But what was it that made Encanto so successful? While I find this film far from perfect, it's hard to deny its popularity and influence on Disney as a company in the past few years. So why was it so big? In my opinion, a lot of Encanto's success comes from Lin-Manuel Miranda, the composer and lyricist of all of its songs. If somehow this lip-biting theater kid has not graced your screen by now, Lin-Manuel Miranda was also the composer, lyricist, and star of Hamilton, along with these things. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a guy the internet loves to meme on, myself included, because he's really been everywhere over the past 10 years or so. Writing the biggest musical Broadway's seen this century, composing deeply influential music for the stage and screen, even rewriting classics for a modern era. The internet asks, why is Lin everywhere? Well, It's because he's really good. Like, he is very, very good at what he does. Hamilton had such a large reach and widespread appeal for a reason. It's too good to ignore. So, Disney yoinking him to write a couple of their musicals was a smart move, and one they had made before. It's important to note that musical theater composers and lyricists have been a large part of Disney's success since the 90s. A big example is the aforementioned Alan Menken and Howard Ashman coming on to write the music for The Little Mermaid following the success of their off-Broadway masterpiece Little Shop of Horrors. The two went on to write Beauty and the Beast along with most of Aladdin until Ashman tragically died from AIDS. Ashman brought forth a sense of nuance to Disney's lyrics that had been missing in their previous musical endeavors, and mixed with Menken's brilliant musical mind, the two successfully brought Broadway to Disney. Menken went on to work with other famous Broadway lyricists like Tim Rice and Stephen Schwartz. While we'd still get the occasional stinker here and there, along with a couple of Phil Collins-infested sort of musicals, it seems that Disney had realized that their films found much more success and longevity with this formula of bringing on theater composers and lyricists. Hell, when Elton John wrote the music for The Lion King, he worked with Tim Rice instead of his usual lyricist, making for some of the most iconic film music of all time. Even though Disney's musical endeavors were becoming more sparse, this trend continued into the 2010s. Tangled, Frozen, Moana all had music by successful theatrical composers and lyricists. The one sort of exception here is The Princess and the Frog, with music and lyrics by Randy Newman, but even he has his theater credits along with an already very theatrical style of composing. I mean, come on, do you think the guy who wrote Short People isn't gonna write a banger musical? I don't think so.
Short people got no reason to live.
All of this leads to the 2020s, in which there are two Disney animated musicals, Encanto and Wish, the first of which is good. The music here is certainly the strongest. While not every song grabs me personally, there is a lot here for me to love. Thematically, it's strong, and while the song placements follow a lot of the same patterns Disney musicals have used in the past, it still feels really fresh and original due to the witty lyrics and stellar music. It's not perfect, but it's very easy to see why audiences loved it so much. And then there's Wish, which is the first animated Disney musical since The Little Mermaid to not follow this trend of using theatrical composers and lyricists. Unless you consider Tarzan or Brother Bear to be musicals, which I don't. This film, very noticeably, did not vie for a Broadway composer or lyricist, instead opting for Julia Michaels, a pop musician, and Benjamin Rice, a pop producer. This is by no means intended to spark hatred against either of these two. I think they are both very talented at what they do, but you might realize that writing musicals isn't what they do. I think Michaels is actually a very good songwriter, but her songwriting does not lend itself towards a musical setting. The songs in Wish feel tonally strange, especially when mixed with the story and aesthetics of the film. The film looks like it takes place on an old-timey, whimsical island, but the music sounds like a top 40 hits playlist from 2023. But what's new? Everything about this movie feels weird, right? Having these two write the music for this film was an odd choice, and a choice that might prick up the ears of anyone familiar with Disney's work in the past. The most interesting aspect of the music in this film is that it pretty directly follows the formula of other Disney musicals in the past. It has an opening number that details the setting of the film, an I Want song for its main protagonist to lay out their desires, a villain song, a fun world-building song, even a Let's Go Get the Bad Guy song, which is often neglected. However, despite Wish having all of these numbers, they don't exactly work. I find this fascinating, and I think it's worth diving into each of these songs and analyzing exactly why that is. So let's do that! The opening number we've already more than covered, so what's next? Well, the next song is actually a duet with Asha and Magnifico called At All Costs.
I will protect you at all costs.
This song is really puzzling to me because it doesn't really do anything. It happens after Asha has already met Magnifico and she's already seen the wishes he keeps. I think a song around here could have worked, but the film waits for the song to finish to reveal that Magnifico is a villain, which I find odd. Why put a song here if all the crucial parts of the story bookend it? Because of this, the song ends up extending this scene for much longer than it needs to be, and it just makes the movie drag. This is what I think a lot of people don't like about movie musicals, is that a lot of the time, when a movie has to be a musical, composers will comb through a script and just sort of throw in songs willy-nilly. This is also why Disney musicals are often successful, because due to their shorter runtime, they're very particular with where songs are placed. For example, in Frozen, pretty much each song has a function in the film. It doesn't start to throw in the goofy, less important numbers until the second half. Every song in the first half of the film introduces or expands an important character relationship or an internal change in a character. Wish is already throwing in a filler song. And this is the second song.
If happiness was a tangible thing, it would be you.
Next, the movie has a Disney standby with its I Want song entitled This Wish.
So I look up at the stars to guide me.
This song was used in all of the trailers for this film, and I genuinely didn't know whether or not it was, like, actually in the movie. I thought it might be one of those pop covers of Disney songs that they play at the end credits, you know, like Celine Dion singing Beauty and the Beast at the end of Beauty and the Beast. This song is actually the first song in the film that feels justified. Asha has just gone through a life-altering event and just learned that pretty much everything she knows to be true has quite selfish and bad motivations.
I decide.
Asha wants to live in a world where her wishes can come true and where the people in this town she loves so dearly can live fruitful, wishing lives. However reasonable this song's inclusion is, it's still quite bad and does a weak job at exemplifying these themes. This boils down to both the song itself and the way it is presented. Lyrically, the biggest problem with this song is that no lyric feels like it is being said by Asha or coming from her point of view. Every song in this movie actually feels like it's sung by the same voice. I understand each song was written by the same two people, but there's a difference between having a style consistent throughout each song and each song being samey. Take a look at Stephen Sondheim's Company. While you can tell each song was written by Sondheim, no two characters sing the same way or fall victim to similar lyrical patterns. Amy sings entirely different than Joanne because they're different people.
Pardon me, is everybody here? Because if everybody's here, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding.
Another vodka singer.
But Asha sounds exactly the same as Magnifico or this goat in terms of their diction or the way they sing. It leads to a cast album that might be better suited as a pop record rather than music that tells an actual story. On top of that, This Wish cares much more about pithy and clever rhymes compared to the actual wants of Asha. And this is strange, you know, it being pretty clearly an I Want song after all. Its meter breaks free of itself constantly, which is one of my pet peeves.
I've got reservations and hesitations on where I should even begin.
Like, wow, so many words.
I'm past dipping my toes in, but I'm not past diving in.
Despite the word count, these lyrics really fail to let us in on Asha's character, because every lyric feels painfully vague.
Got all of this freedom in my bones, but I've still got the lid on, so it doesn't overflow.
At the end of the day, this song isn't really a show tune. It feels much more like a recycled pop song. And I can't even be surprised, because the people who wrote it don't write musicals. They write pop songs. You know who else doesn't write musicals? Phil Collins. Except for that one time. And they accommodated for this by not forcing Collins' music to be sung by its characters. I'm not saying they should have done this for Wish. In fact, I'm glad they didn't. But it's still weird to force these songs into a musical when they don't really work in one. Presentation-wise, Ariana DeBose's performance is fine. She's very talented, but the way they animated Asha singing this song is infuriating to me. This is where it's the most clear that this is a recycled pop song, because Asha literally closes her eyes as she hits her high notes. Why? She doesn't have to do that. She's not a real person. Also, in musical theater, it doesn't really make sense to close your eyes in a song like this. You might be passionate, but remember, while a character is singing, they're supposed to be living and feeling emotion. When have you ever told somebody about how much you want something and started closing your eyes passionately? This Wish takes what was so popular about Frozen and Encanto and misinterprets why people liked those songs. The music in those films had catchy hooks and were full of good character development. This has the former, sure. That chorus totally gets stuck in my head, but it lacks the latter, because you know what doesn't get stuck in my head? The lyrics. It's just those catchy melodies. And unfortunately, catchiness can only get you so far, especially in a musical. So after Asha sings her little song and makes a wish, Star makes everything in the forest talk, which implies that all of the animals' greatest wishes is to speak, which is sad. These animals then decide to sing a song about how Asha is a star, in a song entitled I'm a Star. You might be asking, why do they sing this? It would be silly to just do a song, right? I have bad news. Okay, let's talk about the purpose of songs in a musical. I can't believe we have to do this. This is a very serious problem with Wish, as 3 out of 4 of the songs we've talked about so far have not been included for any real reason. One of the most famous adages when it comes to musical theater is that when emotions are too high to speak, you sing, and when emotions are too high to sing, you dance. And honestly, yeah, That's a really simple way to explain why we sing and dance in musical theater. Of course, there is more nuance to when and where song and dance is necessary in the context of musical theater, like what if the show is through composed? When everything is sung, is nothing important? I think an easier way to look at it when it comes to movie musicals is asking, does this song add anything to the film? This can be done in numerous ways. Either it moves the story forward, fleshes out a character, emphasizes the theme, or exists to expand the universe. When a song can be cut from a film and nothing changes, maybe it's not a very good song. I'm a Star does nothing! Since we're analyzing these numbers through the idea that each of these songs exist in some other form in a previous Disney film, I'm a Star is the most similar to a song like Under the Sea in The Little Mermaid. Under the Sea is pretty vital to The Little Mermaid. It brings forth the traditional values of Sebastian, all while showing that Ariel is unwilling to listen to anything that dissuades her from getting what she wants, to be where the people are. Where I'm a Star differs, however, is that this song is sung by a bunch of animals and doesn't really allow us to learn more about Asha, or anyone for that matter. This song has very little purpose. At its best, it's explaining one of the film's core themes to you, that you are special. At its worst, it's just filler.
I'm a star.
Watch out, world, here I are.
Oh yeah, and there's a rap break. It's super cool.
Boom! Did we just blow your mind? Well, I've known the entire time. Get back to your system.
Silly moments like that aside, this song represents a massive issue with this film's music. It's all here due to obligation, not because it matters. This harkens back to my previous point about the film focusing on its plot over actually telling a story. Wish doesn't feel like a piece of art made with intention. It prioritizes a catchy song over the right song. Also, completely unrelated, these trees are so scary. Why did they design them to look like melting wax? This is where the film completely lost me, and that's a bad sign because we're only like 30 minutes in. There's an hour left. But luckily for the already absurd length of this part of the video, there's only really 2 songs left. The next is the very memed, "This is the thanks I get."
I let you live it for free and I don't even charge you rent.
So I became aware of this song before Wish was even released because for some reason they released it as a single like a month before the movie came out. This was probably to get some hype for the movie from the TikTok crowd, but this backfired. Whoever decided that this was going to be the next big Disney song did not understand young people at all.
I clean up all your messes and I'm always there when you need to.
Here's the thing with young people, and this has always been true. They know when they are being pandered to. So when a song with goofy lyrics and a painfully catchy chorus with bubblegum background vocals is presented as the next big Disney villain song, it's gonna get shit on.
And this is the thanks I get.
Also, this song fails as a villain song for a lot of reasons. The first of which is the easiest to understand. This song is very silly.
I'd give the clothes off Benito's back if you really needed that.
The next is that the imagery used in this number is incredibly low stakes. Magnifico just sort of runs around, singing and messing up his house, sort of like an angry teenager. Comparing the song to other Disney villain numbers, it really pales in comparison. In The Lion King, you have Scar leading an army of hyenas, horrifyingly marching in unison, akin to Nazis in World War II. And in Wish, you have Magnifico spitefully kicking an empty suit of armor. It's just not the same. Finally, I think this number fails because it doesn't really lay way to Magnifico's villainous plans. Sure, there's a short bridge section where he talks about how evil he is, but when surrounded by such a juvenile song, it really just feels like a middle-aged man rubbing his hands together and laughing in a Kohl's parking lot. All of Magnifico's scheming takes place before and after this song, so it makes you ask the question, why even have a song? Next, Asha meets up with her friends and sings to them in yet another song that was seriously in need of a rewrite. Knowing What I Know Now is the call to action song in Wish, and it is bad at being that.
Magnifico is not the man he claims to be. He's more vicious than I could have ever comprehended. This is not what I expected or intended, but now that it's happened, I don't regret it.
It sounds so sloppy that you can't take the characters singing it seriously. So many lyrics end with the word "and" or the like, and it sounds very, very rushed. I have a feeling this music was never really given a second look through, because while I think the compositions are occasionally strong, lyrically, yet again, it falls victim to a lot of pop music tropes. If we want to get into the nitty-gritty, Knowing What I Know Now has a lot of enjambment, which I'll say before explaining isn't inherently bad. Enjambment is a literary tool in which the end of a poetic line is the beginning of the next. In music, this might be better explained as a sentence that continues over a few lines of a lyric. Here's an example from MF Doom's All Caps.
So nasty that it's probably somewhat of a travesty having me. Then he told the people you can call me your majesty.
Wish utilizes bad enjambment. Lyrics end awkwardly, leading to a confusing first listen.
Saying that your wishes aren't safe because of me, and that's a lie, 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 lie. I know I can't do this on my own hand.
This isn't out of the question for pop music, as those songs are meant to be listened to over and over again, and oftentimes their catchiness is prioritized compared to their understandability. But here, in a musical setting, it just makes for a weak song. As an album, Wish might make for a good pop record, but in the context of telling a story, it misses much more often than it hits. This is what confuses me about Disney in recent years. They seem to have forgotten that the songs that made their films so iconic were show tunes. The movies that every millennial is nostalgic for, the ones they keep remaking, are musicals. On top of that, as a climactic number, Knowing What I Know Now has a lack of urgency due to it moving the plot forward way too quickly. I hear you saying, Max, you just complained that the songs didn't move the story forward. Now you're mad that this one is? Yes, because this does a bad job at moving the story forward. Everything is rushed. Each of Asha's friends just agree with her as soon as she starts singing. There's no real convincing needed to get them to help her start a riot against her tyrannical leader, and because of this, the song just doesn't work. Musical theater numbers can both move the plot forward and be true to their characters. This focuses on the former, which is more than you can say about the other songs, but the lack of the latter really makes this song struggle. So that's every song in Wish, other than one reprise, which I'll touch on a bit later.
Will be greater than all his magic combined.
In short, they're bad. These songs boggle my mind because they did go through the hassle of having songs, but they sort of just stopped there. Like, if you're gonna have music, why not get the cream of the crop to write it? This is Disney we're talking about. They have infinite money, and if they wanted to have a pop musician write their music, why not get one who's good at telling stories and whose music lends itself to theater? They exist. Julia Michaels and Benjamin Rice are not musical composers, and they don't know how to be. And to write your first musical at this high of a caliber, with this many eyes on you, is not an encouraging start, but it doesn't seem like Disney cared. After all, everyone would go see Wish. It's a Disney film after all. They're too big to fail. Part 6. Wish flopped because it was written by robots. So Wish did really badly at the box offices. It cost about $200 million to make, and it made like a little bit more than that. And the hot topic surrounding the discourse for this film was that it was made by AI. From a distance, this argument makes some sense. The movie released right after a huge writer's strike, the music and the script often feel weird and full of clunk, and it's bad. That last one is the biggest and most compelling aspect of this argument. AI art has this icky feeling about it and rarely connects with humans the way real human-made art might, because its creator has never been human before. Art exists for us to understand what it means to exist and to live, for us to connect with each other, and robots are quite bad at that. So that begs the question that everyone is yearning for me to address: was Wish made with AI? Personally, I think this question is silly and a bit of a dangerous one, because no, I don't think Wish used AI in its production, at least not to a real noticeable degree. The problem with Wish that many think is bots is that it's unfinished. Wish so clearly was a rushed production. We've gone over how the music bad, the story bad, the goat bad. The writing is not only on the wall, it's on the ceiling. Wish did not cook long enough. It doesn't even feel like it was tested with audiences, and this is easiest to see in its comedy. Like, look at this joke where Star puts on this sparkly outfit.
You can come out now. Are those pajamas?
Thank you. I feel seen.
Let's talk about this for a moment and do Max's favorite type of media analysis: explaining jokes. Star puts on a dress. This we all agree on. And what is Asha's response to this? She says, and I quote, "Are those pajamas?"
Are those pajamas?
No, Asha. Use your eyes, silly. That's a dress. Then the goat says, "Thank you, I feel seen."
Thank you. I feel seen.
What does that mean? So I think it's easy to look at a joke like this and say, this is clearly AI. That joke has no bearing on reality. And to that I say, Have you ever written a joke before? And I am being serious, I'm not being snarky here. Have you? Sometimes jokes fail because they only make sense to you. Comedy is a tricky art form. It only really works with an audience or a definite understanding of your audience. It also just takes a lot of revision and other people looking at your jokes. So no, I don't think that a robot wrote this joke. I think that an unchecked writer did. Who's to say what's worse? It's definitely robots. Jokes like this pop up everywhere, and it's not only an example of bad writing, but bad rewriting. Very rarely do jokes have any real setups. They're what I like to call insert jokes. Jokes that have no bearing on the script and were probably added last second just to make 3-year-olds laugh while running up and down the aisles of the theater.
Last night, after everything happened, I made a wish. On a star.
What are you, 5?
Guys, chill. You're insulting the core audience of this movie. Like, if you cut these jokes from the movie, it would probably be fine.
Shark!
What?
No, I have not seen a shark. I'm just practicing.
What are we doing here? Let's talk about Wish's dialogue again. It's real bad. Half of it is that quirky, Joss Whedon-y, snappy dialogue, and the other half is strangely old-timey and fantastical.
This reads like a recipe book for the foul and the savage.
1, 2, 9 zilliboo. 20 alphabet!
Wait, what?
I can't count.
It's just weird. To me, this is where Wish feels the most human. The dialogue's inconsistent tone just further emphasizes that the script didn't get the attention it so desperately needed. If the writers had more time, I can imagine that this would have been adjusted in one way or another, but here we're just left with this mess. And that's what's so sad to me. I believe that. I think that this movie had the ability to be at the very least decent. There's a lot of creativity and artistry underneath the surface here, but Disney never gave these artists the luxury of time to finish the product that they were creating. Instead, it was to be released on Thanksgiving, goddammit, finished or not. And people could tell. I've yet to even mention the technical aspects of this film. Everything is super sloppy. The animation looks really unfinished, as I'm sure you've noticed by now. It looks like it's emulating a 2D and 3D hybrid style, similar to the Spider-Verse films, but rather than creating visually stunning animation to achieve this or using it to their advantage, it just looks flat, like it's not fully committed to either 2D or 3D. It just pick one. Even the audio is bad. Listen to how loud Magnifico sounds when he enters this room.
No. Asha, that book is forbidden.
He's so loud. He's supposed to be across the room. They didn't think to at least try to make him sound like he's in the environment at all. Some reverb, or even just turning him down a little bit would have done this. Did they not watch the movie once with headphones to make sure it sounded good? The biggest folly Wish has in terms of its writing is that it's incredibly hard to take seriously. It has such a silly conceit, the idea of an evil wizard stealing people's wishes for no apparent reason, and they did absolutely nothing with it. I feel like a competent writer could potentially make this film amount to something, but with all of these other aspects working against it, I'm not sure how much it would matter. The film has this supposedly powerful climax of the entire town of Rosas singing Asha's I Want song together, but at this point in the film, I felt absolutely nothing. After being hit with unfunny goat jokes, pointless meandering music, and messy visuals, I sort of zoned out. It wears you down, and the theme is lost. Asha emphasizes the film's theme to herself, similar to the ending of Bambi.
We are stars.
But unlike Bambi, the theme hasn't been sold to me. I just started laughing at how clunky the lyrics sounded when everyone sang them in unison.
We're past dipping our toes in, we know it's do or die, it's sink or swim.
I feel like I don't have to say this, but when people think your shit is AI, that's a bad sign. It means something is off, and in Wish, frankly, not much is on. I do think, however, it's kind of lame to just call this movie AI. Not only did real people work on this movie, but calling art you don't like AI is just kind of poor media analysis, in my opinion. There are big problems with Wish. Hell, I wrote a 22-page long dissertation on why it failed. But that doesn't mean it's not art. Bad art is still art. We can make fun of an apple all we want, but at the end of the day, it's still fruit. I think rather than dismissing something like Wish as made by bots, we should try to learn from it, especially if you're an artist. And in my opinion, if there's anyone to really blame, it's Disney as a company, not the people who made this movie. They're the ones forcing this shit out year after year, arbitrarily moving forward deadlines. You excited for that new Moana movie this year? Same shit. So yeah, hot take, robots didn't make Wish, people did. poorly. Because sometimes that happens. We all flop, and sometimes our circumstances make it so our art isn't that great. Do you think I'm proud of some of the video projects I made in high school when we were only given the class period to record? No, I'm not. To me, it's impressive that something like Wish can be made, given how big the scale. Like, yeah, it's still possible for movies to have dialogue like this.
My love.
And characters that are stars named Star. Seriously, that's baffling. And it's all because Disney likes one thing more than referencing their older, better movies. Money. Part 7, Musical Reluctance. So, why is Wish a musical? What about this story makes you feel that there was no other way for it to be told except for these songs? What new information do any of these songs give to us? To bring it to yet another older example from Disney, let's look at The Little Mermaid. Every single song in this movie introduces something new and makes the film stronger. Part of Your World tells us everything we need to know about Ariel as a character, her ambitions, her wants. Poor Unfortunate Souls introduces Ursula and the evil personality beneath her kind veneer. Under the Sea shows us the ignorant bliss of these fish and how Ariel might need to be grateful for what she has. The film uses this song to show the audience that Ariel is young, and while life in the ocean might be lovely, we all have an urge in our youth to get away and explore the unknown. The songs in this movie are, well, important, as they should be in a musical. Fun little tidbit, this is the case with pretty much every iconic and popular Disney musical. It's also why Wish feels so directionless. None of the songs are important here. In fact, if you take them out of the film, the movie kind of flows a lot better. I love songs in musicals, but I'll be honest, whenever one started in Wish, I felt the film grind to a halt. So why the hell did they make Wish a musical? I think there are two reasons, one more likely than the other. The first is that Disney knows when they make musicals, they're more likely to become generational hits and define an era for the company. And for their 100th anniversary, that would make sense. That said, Wish doesn't feel like the film Disney wanted to make, but the film it was obliged to make. The second reason is money. It's money. It's always money. Musicals, if done right, make more. You have streaming, album sales, trendy TikTok dances that give you free advertising, even shit like this. I bought this! And Wish fucking reeks! I just thought this little star guy was low-key cute as fuck. I'm the problem! I can't get him back on the set. Oh, fuck. Yeah, that's right. Keep your face down. I don't even want to look at you. This movie's goal was to sell plushies, to go viral on TikTok with its catchy pop songs, to be this decade's Frozen. And it didn't work. All because Disney tried making a musical without making a musical. They got pop artists to write the music. They forced the story along, threw in songs where they would usually go compared to where they should go. And they didn't flesh out their characters the way any good musical would through song. They coasted, and they groaned and sighed when they realized they have to keep doing this. If anything, Wish makes me a little bit hopeful. Disney tried to really just get by with this one, to force the creative people who wanted to work with them to their limits, and it didn't work. And it's not because the movie was in theaters or because it had poor advertising. I think it's pretty obviously because it was bad. You know what other movie had pretty bad advertising? Frozen. I saw that trailer and was ready for a dumbass movie about a snowman. But the funny thing about movies is that people talk about them. God, that's like all I do. And Wish is not really a movie you can talk about because every aspect of it is so mundane, so trite, so bad that you just sort of block it out of your brain. So, because this movie flopped so badly, maybe it will be a wake-up call. Let's see what they have lined up for their next animated movie. Oh, that's right, it's Moana 2. I know I said it'll be the same as all this other shit, but at least they have Lin-Manuel Miranda. What's that? They don't have Lin coming back to do the music? It's the people who did the Bridgerton musical from TikTok, and it's a repurposed Disney Plus series? Okay, we're doomed!
For if the bomb that
I wanted to say thank you to all of my lovely patrons whose names are going by here. There's actually a lot of really cool new stuff over on my Patreon. I talk about new things every month and it's voted on by the patrons, and I have a really great time over there. Most recently, I did a video about Cinderella 2021, you know, the one with Camila Cabello, but I also have a video about Dear Evan Hansen on there, Cats 2019, even The Greatest Showman, and a couple of Star Kid musicals, which I know everybody wants me to talk about on here. So if you want to see me talk about any of those, I don't intend on making a main channel video about any of those topics, so the only place you're going to be able to hear me talk about those things is over on the Patreon, which is exciting. It's also a nice way to support the channel, and I know that videos take a lot longer to come out lately, so if you want to tide yourself over before the next video, I highly recommend the Patreon. It's a really good time. I also post stuff on my second channel all the time if you want to check that out. All of those links are going to be in the doobly-doo, so if you want to check the Patreon out, check out the second channel, or just any other helpful links that are down there, the description is going to be where that's at. These are all my $5 plus patrons who I am just so extremely grateful for, but I am also grateful to all of you. So thank you so much for watching this video. I deeply appreciate it. I love making things, and I love that you people even slightly acknowledge that I am a person who makes things. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I'll see you sooner than you think. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Bye.
We will all burn together when we burn. There'll be no need to stand and wait your turn. When it's time for the fallout and St. Peter calls us all out, we'll just drop our agendas and adjourn.